Scream, despite being titled just Scream, no number or subtitle, this is the 5th installment of the Scream franchise, but don't worry if you're like, that's such a dumb title. Oh my gosh, it's purely just inspired by how the new Halloween movie is just called Halloween and not Halloween 2 or whatever. They know. It's totally intentional, and it works. It's fine. And in this film, another series of Ghostface killings is occurring in the town of Woodsboro. We have a new cast of characters that are being haunted by this figure and being picked off one by one. And these characters need the help of some of the older characters like your Deweys, like your Gales, like your Sidney Prescotts to come in and help them out. I was really excited for this movie, like more so than a lot of other movies, for no other reason other than I'm just a big fan of the Scream franchise. Like I love the first movie. It's an incredible slasher satire while also being just a great slasher movie. And Scream 2 I think is also still a really great follow-up. And even Scream 3, which I know a lot of people are like, not my favorite, I don't really like that movie. And yeah, I can understand it has its issues, but I actually still enjoy that movie, you know? I even rewatched it a couple days ago. I do still enjoy that movie. And then you also have Scream 4, which I think is a fun addition. All of these movies I have had fun with and I've really, really liked. So the idea of more Screams happening, especially since this isn't really a franchise that has been sequelized to death like your Halloweens or like your Friday the 13th or anything like that. This is one that kind of pops up every once in a while to give you something really fun. Usually they're all made by Wes Craven, but since he unfortunately passed away, we have the team behind Ready or Not helming this movie, and one of the writers is writing the script as well, which was the other reason why I was incredibly excited for it, is that they picked a group of filmmakers that I was really interested in seeing more of after Ready or Not. Obviously, yes, Devil's Due was nobody's favorite movie. It's not my favorite movie, but these guys are talented. I watched some of their earlier like interactive adventure YouTube content back in the day. That was really fun. You know, their segment in VHS is also really thrilling and I enjoy it. And then Ready or Not is just a really fantastic horror film from them, a really great thriller with some really great laughs. So I think as far as like choosing who's gonna make another Scream movie, these guys are not a bad choice at all. So I was excited to see what they could do with this, and I walked out of this really in love with this movie. I think this is definitely my favorite Scream sequel that we have gotten, and like I said, this is coming from someone who's enjoyed them all. This is, I think, my favorite, because once again, this movie is very meta. They keep up with the same meta dialogue and meta kind of storytelling, and it's just not really a Scream movie without that, you know, like the first movie has it and every single other movie has had it. So as far as like, I know some people are probably looking at some other movies that have either gotten meta or they're doing like the legacy sequel, you know, soft reboot kind of thing. This movie series is kind of built on understanding the film tropes of the day and just doing it with its own slasher story. So this is one of those examples where anyone who tries to criticize this movie for that, you know, it's kind of mute, because that's literally exactly what they're going for. And the way they've structured it around kind of the soft reboot, I think they did that excellently. The legacy characters actually do take a bit of a step back to let some of these newer characters have a time to shine, and I think that was definitely a wise choice. We've seen a lot of those characters, so I'm totally fine with the way they're utilized in this. Obviously, it's fantastic to see Neve Campbell back as Sidney Prescott. She is literally the best Scream Queen, the best final girl. She's literally one of the best horror characters out there. Neve Campbell still plays her really well. Courtney Cox, it's fun seeing her come back as Gale Weathers, and I really like how her dynamic with Dewey has changed a bit. No spoiling that, but I really do like what they introduced as far as that relationship goes and how they wanted to evolve the characters. And speaking of Dewey, David Arquette might be the standout of the original three in this movie. He definitely has kind of like, you know, the Han Solo or like the older Arnold and like Terminator Dark Fate kind of vibe of like, you know, he comes in to help them pretty early on. He's kind of like their lead in into, you know, what has kind of happened before, you know, here's some advice, you know, that kind of stuff. And David Arquette, I thought, did a really great job of still maintaining the Dewey performance and the Dewey character that we've come to love, but adding in this kind of new flavor of like, you know, he's gotten old, he's been through this a lot, and he's a little bit jaded because of that too. So just all in all, it was just really great to have those three back and see them back on the big screen and have a really great follow-up for them, especially bringing back Roger L. Jackson as the voice of Ghostface. In the Scream TV series, there's like 2 seasons of that where they have a different voice actor doing it, and that's not bad. But in season 3, even though season 3 is worse than the other 2 before, they brought back Roger L. Jackson, and there's just this way of like, that's the Ghostface voice right there. And it was just great having that voice have new dialogue and just interacting with these characters in that same kind of way that he has already. Like, I love the opening of this movie where it is that slow build of like, you get the normal kind of voice and it, gradually changes, and it's wonderful. And speaking of the opening of this movie, Jenna Ortega absolutely steals this movie, I think, from almost everybody. She is one of the most skilled actresses working today, believe it or not. Like, she absolutely manages to, outshine so many other people, which is amazing. She's fantastic in this movie and really sells a lot of her performance. I don't want to spoil too much of it because there's more to it than what I originally thought going in, but it was just so great and so emotionally kind of, stressing me out because I was like, oh my gosh, how much can Jenna Ortega go through in this movie? And then you have our new lead character, Melissa Barrera, who's just in the Heights. Great movie. She's great in it too. And she's also really great in this as the new kind of Sidney Prescott, but not like Emma Roberts in Scream 4. It's not like, this movie's not like the Scream 4 method of satirizing the horror remake. This is, as I said, more satirizing the legacy sequel, the not quite a sequel, but not quite a remake. It's a mixture of both kind of movies that we get that kick off a new thing. But she is not a copy and paste of just the same character, Sidney Prescott. Obviously, there's still some elements, but it's kind of new. And that was another aspect of the screenplay that I liked, was that obviously it's a satire of the legacy sequel. And a lot of the motivation around some of the characters is based off of that, which, without spoiling too much, because I thought it was really fantastic how they really lampooned a certain way of thinking about fandom, about movies and franchises. That's all I'll say. But I really liked how they went with that and actually made that a big part of the movie. But like I said, the original Scream, what makes that movie so great is that it's a great satire, but it's also just a great slasher movie. So aside from the satire, you also have Melissa Barrera's character, who I don't want to spoil too much of that either, because that was also something that I didn't know about going in, caught me completely off guard. But, without saying too much, it kind of deals with mental health in a way of like, if you find out someone related to you in your family, bloodline, whatever, has done something atrocious, something horrible, and you maybe worry that because you're related somehow, that may affect how your life turns out, how you may turn out, because you're never, at that point, you're never quite sure, because the mind is an interesting thing to study. You're never quite sure if at one point you might turn out exactly like them. And I feel like that was a really interesting thing to explore, especially in a slasher movie, a Scream movie in particular like this. And I think Melissa Barrera is fantastic in this. She and Jenna Ortega are obviously the standouts in this. Even the new group of friends, like Jasmine Savoy Brown, Mason Gooding, Dylan Minnette, a couple other people, I thought even they were really fun to watch in this. It's interesting because, you've seen so many murders in the town of Woodsboro. I like that these group of friends, obviously, they're friends, but they're kind of at that point where they're just kind of openly like, I don't know, maybe you're the killer, dude. I mean, shoot, you're being pretty suspicious right now. I don't know. But they can still like hang out, like they still hang out with each other, but every once in a while they're just like, I don't know where you're going. You might be a killer, but I'm gonna keep hanging in your house, dude. I thought that was actually pretty funny. But I like their dynamic. I think they all have interesting performances as well. So I think the screenplay really works for this movie. I think it's really smart. I like its use of satire. I like just the regular kind of humor you get, like a Jack Quaid kind of carrying a lot of the comedic relief. He's really great. I really hope that his career kind of explodes because, he's great on The Boys. He's great in this. I'd like to see more Jack Quaid pop up in things because he's also really great in this movie. So I love the general humor of this. I love the satire. I like how the satire influences the character motivations as well, because that also, I think, makes it smart and interesting. But I also like what they're doing with the actual main character to make her own thing, make her interesting in her own right. The performances are all great too, but of course, what everyone wants to know, how are the kills? And they are fantastic. They're well choreographed. They're well staged, well paced out too. There's one sequence in particular that it's like a good chunk of the movie where the movie knows it's fucking with you. Like, for example, like, that thing where someone opens like a door and they're like at it for a while, then they close it. Oh my gosh, it's such an easy thing to do, like a jump scare there. And this movie has a scene where moments like that happen so often. And you know, as an audience, as soon as they close it, you're like, oh, they fucked with me. And the movie knows, like, yeah, we're gonna keep doing it too. And it's so funny to actually watch. But the thing is that it's funny because you recognize that's a trope that they're trying to, like, make a joke at. Like, oh, you think there's something there, but there isn't really. We're gonna keep doing that because it is an easy way to fuck with you. But you also understand in that scene, there's legit tension going on. Like something is going on. It's just when's it gonna happen? So it's a mix of really great suspenseful tension building and also comedy, but still the kills are brutal though. Obviously I mentioned that scene. Then you have like the opening scene of this movie, which is like I think a really great introduction to the rest of this movie. Similar to what I said about like how Melissa Barrera's character, you know, she's the new Sidney Prescott, but she's not just a copy-paste version of that character. There's elements, but it's not exactly the same. The opening scene of this movie, obviously, you know, there's elements of the original Scream opening, but it's not exactly the same at all. You know, they do their own thing to have a different kind of story, which I think ultimately is what works about this. I'm really glad that these group of filmmakers were working on this. They were writing it, they were directing it, because obviously it looks fantastic. It's a well-shot movie. Great score, by the way, too. Wonderful, scary music to accompany it. You know, it's well lit. Everything about this movie, I think, from a technical standpoint, works really well. If I had to nitpick, I would say that there are some, like, technical things, like, you know, when, you know, in movies how sometimes the character will send a text and then immediately the other person will send a text right back, and it's like, all right, like there's some like kind of quick cuts, kind of technical things like that I noticed, and I was like, maybe not that. Let's not do that. But other than those technical gripes that I had with it, I think this group of filmmakers was definitely the right choice to make this movie, because they can make a movie really well. We just saw that with Ready or Not, but they also show that they have a clear understanding of like how a Scream movie needs to be, but we're not going to try to overdo it either. Like, just because we are doing like a legacy sequel and, you know, Wes Craven, he's one of the greatest, you know, we got to live up to that. It seems like everything is just staged around like what works for the narrative. Like, okay, well, we've never seen this in a Scream movie before, so let's push it, you know, keep pushing it. It's like, no, like everything I think works. Like, as far as like the horror sequences go, like the big set pieces of the movie, you know, it's not anything too like grandiose or like too extravagant. It's like very simple stuff, but I think that's what makes it the most effective at the end of the day, you know, as well as just it works narratively with the story they're telling. They don't try to top what came before, what was great before, so they just do their own thing. And they do it in a, I know that sounds ironic because this is kind of wrapped in a soft reboot, you know, remember Scream, kind of satire of a story, but like I said, it's a satire. They know what they're doing, and in that they do their own thing too. So I don't know. I really like this movie. The only other issue I can maybe say about this is that I couldn't tell if it was like a performance thing or like a dialogue thing, but every once in a while there'd be like one line read where I was like, maybe change the line, or maybe, I don't know, maybe they could have delivered it better. I wasn't sure. There was just a couple moments like that in this movie that kind of threw me, but overall, I had a great time with this. If you're a big fan of the Scream franchise, I think this is going to do you right. If you're not a big fan of the Scream franchise, if you maybe just like the first one, I think, you know, this one might be right up your alley too, because I just think it's a really well-made movie. I think it's a really well-written satire, but also just a really well-written movie with good characters that I enjoyed watching and fearing for and being suspicious of and laughing with. I'm gonna give Scream an A-. I really enjoyed this movie. I hope everyone goes to see it. I know it just had a big box office opening weekend budget, 24 million, opening weekend 30 million. That's fantastic. I'm so happy that something could take down Spider-Man, even though kind of expected because Spider-Man's been out for a while, but still, my point remains. I'm just so happy that we could potentially maybe get more. I think this movie, another thing, is that it ends in a way where we don't need anymore. Like, it could just end, and that could be great. But if they did make more, especially with the same team, you know, I'd be all for seeing whatever it is they want to do. I think this is definitely something that I would like to see more of. Like I said, Scream is something that has never really been sequelized to death, even though there are like 5 sequels now, 5 movies. It's not like Halloween where there was just like so many, and even like the Rob Zombie remakes right before the new David Gordon Green movie. So this is something I'd like to see more of, especially if it is of the same kind of quality. Another thing, suck it, Blumhouse. Are you kidding me with these Halloween movies, especially Halloween Kills? Scream just fucking owned you guys. Jesus Christ. But if you've seen Scream, leave in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.